All right, so today, let's dive into this incredible story about a king from ancient Babylon. I mean, this guy had everything. We're talking wealth, massive armies, sprawling palaces, the whole 9 yards. But he had this one fatal flaw that was going to bring it all crashing down. It's a classic tale, really, arrogance versus faith. And it all kicks off with one of the boldest claims you'll ever hear. I mean, can you even imagine? I am the god of this earth. Just wow. Think about the level of sheer confidence, the absolute arrogance you'd need to have to even think that, let alone say it out loud. But that's exactly where King Nimrod was at. For him, he didn't just rule the land. In his own mind, he was the land. He genuinely believed he was the one dishing out life and death, the source of, well, everything. So you can imagine what it was like for the people of Babylon, right? Living under the shadow of this guy's massive ego. They actually had a word for it. Takabur. And this isn't just, being a little proud. No, this is a whole other level. It's an arrogance so deep, so profound, that it just completely swallows up any sense of reason, and it always, always leads to destruction. Nimrod wasn't just a king in his own eyes. He was, for all intents and purposes, a god. And this is where you really see the clash, right? It's such a stark contrast. On one hand, you've got all the stuff that screams power, a huge army, wealth you can't even count, total control over who lives and who dies. But on the other hand, festering underneath all that was this internal poison, this fatal flaw of Takabur. It's a story as old as time, isn't it? The bigger the power, the more devastating the pride. But here's the thing about kings who are obsessed with control. Deep down, they're terrified of losing it. And Nimrod's fear? Well, it was about to face the ultimate test. It all started with a prophecy, a whisper of a new light emerging in his kingdom. The story calls it Ik Roshnik Zahor. So when Nimrod gets wind of this prophecy, the story goes that his face just drains of color, right there in his golden palace. I mean, think about it from his perspective. A single child was supposed to be the one to shatter his whole world, his whole claim to divinity. His reaction was exactly what you'd expect from a paranoid tyrant. Swift and absolutely brutal. He issues this just horrific decree: every single newborn boy is to be killed. The land is just plunged into mourning. But as they say, divine will, it finds a way. The mother of the Prophet Ibrahim, she flees. She goes to this remote mountain cave, and right there, in total secrecy, the very light that Nimrod was so terrified of is born. You have this darkness ruling the kingdom, but a tiny flame of truth is just being kindled, hidden away from it. So as this boy, Abraham, grows up, hidden from the world, he starts this really remarkable journey. But it's not a quest for power with, swords and armies. Nope. This was a journey of the mind, a journey of pure logic and observation. It was his haqqi talash, his personal search for the ultimate truth. In his process was so simple, but at the same time so incredibly profound. He just looked at the world around him. He saw people worshiping all these idols, the stars, the moon. So he starts with the stars. He looks up at night and thinks, okay, are you my lord? But then they set, they disappear. So he moves on. He sees the moon, which is way more brilliant, and asks the same thing. But same story. It disappears too. Finally, the sun comes up, this magnificent, powerful thing. But even the sun vanishes when the day is over. And that's what leads him to this powerful, totally unshakable conclusion. It's like a light bulb goes off. All of these things, the stars, the moon, the sun, they're temporary, they're perishable. So he reasons, the true creator, the one true God, cannot be perishable. And that simple but profound idea, that becomes the bedrock for his entire mission. So what do you do when you discover a truth that big? You certainly don't keep it to yourself, right? So one day, while everyone from his town is off at some festival, Abraham just waltzes into their temple, and he smashes all their stone idols to bits. Well, all of them except for the biggest one. Then, in a brilliant move, he hangs the axe he used on that big idol, setting the perfect trap. A masterclass in logic was about to unfold. You can just picture the scene, can't you? The people come back, see the mess, and they're furious. They demand to know who did it. And Abraham just calmly says, hey, ask the big guy. He's the one holding the axe. And of course, they fire back, what are you talking about? You know they can't speak. And boom, that was the point. This incredible act of defiance, this brilliant piece of reasoning, it sends shockwaves through the city, and eventually word gets all the way to the king. The stage was now set for the ultimate showdown. So Abraham is dragged before King Nimrod, and the king asks him point blank who he worships. And with just complete calm, no fear at all, Abraham says, "My Lord is the one who gives life and death." Now, that, that was a direct shot at Nimrod. He was basically throwing the king's own claim right back in his face. And Nimrod, he just scoffs. He laughs. "Huh, I do that too," he boasts. And to prove his point, he brings out 2 prisoners from the dungeon. He lets one go free, giving him life, and then orders the other one to be executed, dealing out death. It was this cynical, twisted game, right? He's confusing his power as a king with actual divine authority. But Abraham, he was ready for this. This is where Abraham delivers the knockout blow. He presents a challenge that is so pure, so simple, but so utterly devastating. He says, okay, my Lord raises the sun from the east, so if you are God, raise it from the west. I mean, just brilliant. It's a completely unanswerable question. It was a logical checkmate, game over. And you can just imagine the scene. The historical accounts say the entire court just fell silent, like the air itself froze. For the first time in his entire reign, the great King Nimrod, the guy who called himself the god of the earth, was completely speechless. That massive wall of arrogance was just cracked wide open by the simple, undeniable power of the truth. Now, here's the thing. When an arrogant ruler is backed into a corner by logic, they really only have 2 choices, right? They can accept the truth, or they can try to destroy it. And Nimrod, well, he chose destruction. He chose fire. And this brings us to the next chapter of our story, the miracle of the fire. He couldn't win the argument, so what does he do? He resorts to brute force. His rage is just off the charts. He orders his people to build this enormous bonfire, a fire so massive it would be a monument to his anger. His plan was simple: burn away the man who had dared to expose him. And to give you an idea of the scale we're talking about, the fire was so huge, the heat was so intense, that the stories say birds flying way, way up in the sky actually had to change their flight path just to avoid it. That's how big this thing was. In fact, they couldn't even get close enough to throw Abraham in. They had to build a catapult just to launch him into the blaze. So there he is. Abraham is flung through the air, flying towards what looks like certain, agonizing death. And in that very moment, the true sovereign of the universe issues a command. But it's not a command to an army or to another king. It's a command to the fire itself. "O fire, be cool and peaceful for Abraham." And just like that, a miracle happens. The very nature of fire is fundamentally changed. The thing that was supposed to be this instrument of horrific death, it becomes a cool, peaceful garden. And when the flames finally die down, the crowd just stares in absolute disbelief as Abraham simply walks out, totally unharmed, his face reportedly glowing. At this point, Nimrod's power is just shattered. He's been defeated by logic, and now he's been defeated by a miracle that his mind just can't even begin to process. But the story isn't quite over. So what happened in the end? What's the final lesson here, the ibret, as they call it, in the downfall of this arrogant king? And you know, the way his downfall comes about is just, it's the ultimate irony. You have all that power, all those armies, all that gold, and what finally brings him down? It's not another army. It's not a rebellion from his people. No, according to the traditional accounts, it was one of the tiniest creatures you can possibly imagine. The story goes that a single mosquito flew up in Nimrod's nose and got stuck in his brain. Can you believe it? The man who claimed he could control life and death was driven completely mad by this constant, unbearable pain from within. The source of his agony was so small, so insignificant, and it's such a perfect metaphor, isn't it? It perfectly mirrors just how small his own claims to divinity really were. And that's really where this whole story comes full circle and lands right back in our laps. It's super easy to look back at this ancient king and judge him, right? But the story is meant to leave us with a really challenging, really personal question. When we think about our own pride, in our jobs, our achievements, how smart we think we are, do we ever hear a tiny little echo of that same arrogance? It's a tough question, but a powerful one to end with. Is there a little Nimrod hidden inside me too?